Hello and welcome to the Silhouettes All Candidates debate for the 2013 MSU presidential election. I'm Sam Colbert, executive editor of the Silhouette, and I'm here with 6 of the 7 candidates. Rory Yendt couldn't make it this evening. We saw these candidates last Wednesday for the first time together at Presidential Pub Night in 1280, and we'll see them again on Tuesday for a debate in the Student Center. Today's debate is online only on video. If you're catching it live, you can see it later on YouTube as well. This evening, we'll be focusing on platform points specifically. The Silhouette's editorial board has created questions in advance. If you want to discuss the questions, you can go on Twitter and use the hashtag MSUPres13. We're going to begin with opening statements from each of the candidates. They have 30 seconds. Mr. Brodka, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Jacob Brodka. I'd just like to thank the Silhouette for facilitating this opportunity. I know there's been a lot of questions going around on when we'd actually be able to sit down and start discussing the ideas that are being thrown around. I said it before, the beauty about this campaign period is we're turning students' attention towards ideas and how we can improve student experience at the school. So I'm really looking forward to tonight.
Mr. Campbell.
Hi, my name's David Campbell. I'm also running for MSU president, and this year I've really tried to put together a platform based on my experience, and that draws on my experience within the student union this year and tries to innovate within the opportunities that are available. So I look forward to an opportunity to discussing those ideas a little bit more, and I'm very happy to be here at this debate.
Hi everyone, my name is James Dowdall, and I am also running for the presidency of the McMaster Student Union. I'd like to thank everyone for the support they've given us over the last week, as well as seeing so many students engaged and asking questions. It's been absolutely fantastic. My platform has focused on building on what we have while being innovative and forward-thinking enough to incorporate new ideas. I do hope that you all take the time tonight to listen to the amazing ideas presented here and hear us out on what we think can better your student experience.
You already know who I is. Look at my chest. Be prepared for amazingness. We got J. Beebs, DC, JD, Dan from Manchester, and Haman, man. Be prepared for awesome things. Thank you.
Hello guys. Hello everyone watching from home. My name is Dan Fahey. I'm studying my 3rd year in integrated science, and I'm also running to be president of the Students Union here. My main platform point are on 2 points really. On democratic reform to the Students' Union to make it more inclusive and more relevant to students, and on advocacy, because the Students' Union not only provides good services for us, is meant to fight for our interests as students. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Haman. I'm running on accountability, accessibility, and improving business relationships with McMaster and the local community, as well as universities across Ontario. And just getting students engaged overall, and hopefully we'll have a good chance to discuss that throughout this debate. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Mr. Man, if you could speak right into the mic next time. Yeah. Because Rory Yendt couldn't make it tonight, I've agreed to read a statement from him. It's a little longer than his 30 seconds, but it covers the whole debate for him. So, hello, my name is Rory Yendt, and I'm running for MSU president. I'm a second-year software engineering student. There are 3 main pillars to my platform encompassing community, academia, and financials. These are expressed through the implementation of MSU scholarships, the 24-hour study space, and the rolling referenda, respectively. With MSU scholarships, a new committee will be created, much like the awards committee, to decide which students should be selected to be given the scholarship. These will range from around $1,500 to $2,000 and be created from the existing MSU surplus. Next, there's the 24-hour study space. This tends to be the platform I have seen voiced by many students. As workload gets more and more intense and studying long hours gets more common, these increased hours of operation will help alleviate this problem. The study space is to be held in Thode Library and will be hosted throughout the whole year instead of just exam periods, thus allowing students to have access to campus at any time during the day. Finally, the rolling referenda focus on the financial side of the MSU. This is enacted much like all referenda throughout McMaster University, allowing each student to vote on the non-operational fees of the MSU. Dividing this task over 4 years allows a few referenda to be voted on each year, while still allowing each student a vote on every fee. These tasks, which are quite feasible and practical, will begin to engineer a better students' union. Now we're going to go to our first question. Each of you will be given a response. And then after that, we'll have questions that are going to be directed at specific candidates. This first question, Mr. Campbell is going to start. Name one part of your platform or one issue that your platform discusses that you think is not being adequately addressed by the platforms of other candidates. And you have 1 minute.
I think the platform point, which I would most obviously point towards for that, would be the MAP's summer fees, the fees that currently students are paying towards the Association of Part-Time Students in the summer, which are redundant and aren't earning them any extra services. It turns out that these fees account for $350,000 across the undergraduates at the Student Union, and again, it's just for services already rendered during the year. So I think that is the main platform point I would point to that is specific to my platform and no others.
So the topic that I think isn't getting a lot of attention at the minute is this idea that a lot of students are coming to university saying, I have to study the following degree to get the following jobs. And when I chose to come to McMaster, I picked something I was passionate about because someone told me I should, and I would do better at it, my skills would develop faster, and I would excel. And so my platform point, Macovation, is seeking towards connecting students within the opportunities in our community that help them develop their academic skills while allowing them to find very innovative and creative ways of connecting what they're learning to what they're passionate about. So you come in, you say, I'm studying this, but I like animals, cars, baking, and people in this facility would say, great, we know a great opportunity for you that would help you develop your skills and further your passions. And I think it's important to address this because with the value being placed on degrees, we want to make sure students have the skills they need so that when they're leaving, they can get the jobs they want.
Now, I think the obvious platform point that no one else here is addressing is student fashion. I want, as much as the uniform that I wish to establish is a piece to create a community and also create a sense of unity within McMaster, I also want the citizens of McMaster to look damn good. So the other candidates, while well dressed, I mean, you gotta look good, don't look nearly as good as I do, and y'all are gonna look just as good as I do when you're wearing this. Thank you.
I suppose the issue which the candidates haven't addressed is the democratic structures of the Students' Union and how, in my experience of speaking to students here on campus, the majority of whom don't know or aren't aware of the Student Representative Assembly, I'd say is we need to engage more students into becoming involved in the Students' Union, and that means making a larger SRA, making it more representative for students so that they can actually use it as a conduit for student action and make it relevant to their lives here on McMaster.
It's always hard to follow that. It's always hard to follow that accent. The issue that I'm going for that no one has addressed is the anti-calendar. The anti-calendar being the course evaluations at the end of the year that have been published. The Student Union at University of Toronto, the Arts and Science Student Association, prints the anti-calendar every year with statistics on enrollment, responses received, comments from students, how useful the textbook, the teacher, the material, all that stuff is. And this is integral in creating a more accountable course structure so that if students have complaints, they can directly approach the departments, or that if they have issues that they can't find on online forums, that they can easily address this official calendar that can bring together associations like Titles, Compass, the departments, all the faculties, and that's the issue that I really want to bring whether I win or lose.
I would say the unique aspect of my platform that no one else really kind of dives into with their points is academics, more specifically innovating in the way that we learn. Obviously, the Freedom Point credit that I'm proposing, it would introduce a new multidisciplinary way that students can learn at McMaster. I think it's important that we introduce this because there's a constant demand and push, especially now, for a new type of learning. The fields that we're diving into, the fields that we're all trying to graduate and go into, all require different aspects of learning, and students have different interests outside of whatever their discipline is. So that freedom in exploring will hopefully produce more well-rounded students and hopefully better graduates from McMaster University.
Thanks, guys. You now each have a 30-second period to respond to something you've heard from another candidate. Anything you want, you can say multiple candidates, but it's got to be 30 seconds. We're going to start again with Mr. Campbell.
I actually don't believe I have any rebuttals for this round.
I'll have to agree. I'm going to pass for this round as well.
Next.
Yeah, I have to agree. It's an odd question since I've not had any rebuttals from other candidates beforehand. So,
All right, the pressure's on me, so I'm going to go ahead and criticize Adrian, saying that I believe you, as a joke candidate, you really could have taken the jokes farther than what you've done so far. You could have committed more. For example, saying, hey, the public, the McMaster students, I want to tell you, on December 21st, the world did not end. Next year, we'll make sure it
Now,
happens.
let's try keeping it to what his statement was.
Oh, okay.
Responding to
Based
that
on
specifically.
fashion? Okay. He's sexy. I can't say anything about that.
I also have no rebuttals for this round.
Well, now you're going to have to get critical. Here's the second question, and again, each of you can respond to this question. And we're going to start with Mr. Dowdall. Pick one platform point from one other candidate that you think is not feasible or not necessary or just generally problematic. And again, you have 1 minute, and whoever you critique, they will have 30 seconds right after you speak to respond.
So I get to go first. I'm going to go after David's platform point on the shuttle bus. My concern on it is simply the fact of there was a conversation regarding after-hours transit on there, and given the current union contract as it stands, I'm not sure how feasible that would be and how easy it would be to start advocating for after-hours transit, given that that contract has been in place for several years now.
Okay, Mr. Campbell.
Oh, immediately. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, so I saw this criticism before about the unions, the difficulty of the union hours and making that difficult to negotiate a contract where we'd have buses after hours. I certainly agree that this is going to be a hurdle, but I think we have a very strong lobbying point on this. Several other municipalities provide the same service after hours. And with the contract coming up, I don't think it's unreasonable for us to put student needs first in this case and lobby to get that union policy overturned in this one individual case.
Mr. Emmanuel.
I'm also going to have to target Mr. Campbell here. You mentioned earlier that you wanted to get rid of the MAPS fee, correct? Now, I'm a very big fan of the former MAPS president. I think that such actions should occur more. And so I'm wondering, why are you taking money from such a intelligent group where they use the money for things to, better themselves?
Mr. Campbell.
Well, I realize this is a little tongue-in-cheek, and you're referring to the fact that the past executive director and all the directors of the Association of Part-Time Students actually had a lot of really serious allegations brought against them, primarily for the Spectator. I'd encourage you to look it up. Now, the interesting thing about this platform point is that I think this should be done regardless of the leadership situation at the Association of Part-Time Students. The fact is that whether that money is being spent wisely or not, it's being spent on part-time student issues when it's being delivered by full-time undergraduate students.
Yep.
I suppose it's difficult to target a specific platform point when it's the absence of specific platform points, which I think is a problem for a lot of our candidates here. I mean, only my friend James here has actually spoken about tuition fees. Only myself has spoken about democratic reform, as well as along with me, he's talking about tuition fees. But I suppose to David, I'd have to ask you, why have you not spoken about democratic reform? Is it because you benefited from being elected by 35 people in the SRA last year?
Well, okay, me again. That's a very broad question. So if you're talking about specifically democratic reform with the way the vice presidents are elected, the reason the vice presidents right now are elected not at large but by the Student Representative Assembly is because, unlike the president, VPs are elected with very specific job descriptions. So the president can go out to the student body and promise a very wide-ranging platform, whereas the VPs are expected to fulfill a very specific range of tasks. And because of that, the feeling is that the SRA is best equipped to tell whether they can fulfill those tasks.
Thanks. Mr. Mann.
This question goes to my friend James. Most of your campaign points are very well researched, and I think you'll have a good response for me in terms of your off-campus housing rating system. What makes you think that that rating system won't be open to abuse when there's only about 6 people to 9 people max inside a house, and the times that they go about rating it are every year? Whereas if a landlord, if they have some random problem that could be solved easily outside, but there's bitterness, what will you do to make sure your rating system is clean from abuse?
I think this is a great question because it was brought up earlier. This platform point for me stemmed out of a very simple consequence from this year, which was my property manager who's been rather abusive, not just to myself, but every other household he owns. And I wanted to kind of put something out there that would help students learn more about who they're living with. And I think this, it could be open for abuse. That's a valid point. But I believe that students care more about their housing situations than that. And should they be living with an abusive or non-cooperative property manager, that docking $50 off your lease isn't going to help.
Mr. Brodka.
My question of feasibility, James Dowdall already addressed, and that it was that of the shuttle buses for David Campbell. Again, the same concerns I share, so I don't know if David has any other comments, but if not, I think it was addressed earlier.
It's up to you, Mr. Campbell.
No, I think I spoke my opinions on that earlier. I think it's actually an incredible opportunity right now to address this. I think there's a lot of precedents at other municipalities. I probably don't have time to go into them right here, but I'm planning on writing a blog post on it soon. And yeah, so I think there's a lot of optimism around that.
And it's now your turn again, Mr. Campbell.
Okay. Well, I think what I would point to here is actually a point of Mr. Brodka's, which is greater faculty involvement, and in particular what I believe he's pointed to is in orientation and in mentorship programs. And the reason I would point to those is because I actually think those are fantastic ideas, but one of the things that I've done this year as VP Administration in collaboration with Huzaifa Saeed, who's the VP Education, is work really hard post-Welcome Week in doing a Welcome Week review, and have put forward several different proposals on how faculties could be more involved during the orientation process, during Welcome Week, and afterwards. We've put forward those proposals, and they're being discussed between ourselves and the university and all those in charge of planning Welcome Week right now, with the intention of getting many of them in place for next year. So I'm wondering what sort of plans Mr. Brodka has for doing things that are outside of those proposals.
I think I rose this. First off, I'd just like to say I've been heavily involved in the transition and orientation process at the university, especially this past year. So I've been involved in those discussions that we've had about introducing new faculty involvement and making sure faculties are more involved, because the question was raised, even though we have such a strong residence orientation program, we're with our residents for 1 year, but we're with our faculty and program for 4+ years. So I feel like what I'm going to say is they're proposals and just that. I feel like there are other platform points and issues that were raised amongst yourself and other candidates here that are already in motion.
Right.
For sure.
It's time. Okay, well, we've gotten started with the back and forth. Next round is going to work like this. The Silhouettes editorial board has come up with a series of questions that address general themes that we've seen in all of your platforms. The questions are going to be directed at specific candidates who have addressed, we feel have addressed those topics in their platforms. Those candidates are going to get a minute to go over how their platforms address that topic, and then there'll be some open discussion on that topic. Okay? Here's the first question. How does your platform address improving students in class or overall program experience? Now, in this question, let's stay away from things like study space. We're going to get to that in a later question. We're going to go to 3 people on this one. First, Mr. Brodka, who talks about the Freedom Credit. Mr. Campbell talks about teaching chairs and TA training. And Mr. Mann talks about the anti-calendar course reviews. Go ahead, Mr. Brodka.
From an academic standpoint, in terms of influencing academics at the school, you brought up the freedom credit thing. I feel like I've talked a little bit about that, but I actually want to turn the attention to the Change Forum, because I feel like student consultation is the only way we can improve student experience in the classroom, and the Change Forum is meant to open up opportunities for dialogue, for students to express the needs they need in the classroom. So I would say that that's a method for me to kind of gather student feedback and see what students need in the classroom, bring that to administration, and the Freedom Credit does directly impact our own academics and personal pursuits.
So speaking of in-class experience, like Sam mentioned, I have one platform point dedicated to this, which has two aspects, and that is TA training and teaching chairs. These are both aspects. These are both part of the Better Teaching platform point, which is about improving teaching in our classrooms, both with tutorials and with classes. Now, the TA training point is about the fact that while some of our TAs receive training, it's very inconsistent across faculties, and by and large, it's almost entirely voluntary training, so TAs aren't required to take it at all. And in speaking with the Center for Leadership and Learning on campus, who's in charge of helping better who is tasked with helping better our teachers, they've expressed to me that they would be willing to look into developing a program where we could train our TAs. And very quickly, the Teaching Chairs program as well. There's more information on my website, but it's about having faculty which are dedicated less to research and more specifically to teaching, since that is our top concern as students.
At this point, consider that the course evaluations essentially go into a profile that the teacher holds in case he or she should wish to find a job elsewhere to negotiate his pay. Of course, the departments do take some of these into consideration and attempt to fix courses as they see reasonable. But when it comes to picking out your courses at the beginning of the year, your only resource at this point is students above your age and those on Mac Insiders. And Mac Insiders, essentially, not all courses are listed there. And secondly, it's quite biased with, at most, 5 responses. Given the course evaluations, we expect at least 50% responses from the students. And to add to that, these 50% take away from the statistical bias and really go deep down into what the students want. And we believe that their engagement is going to be greater, knowing that students later on are going to see a physical...
It's time. Thank you, Mr. Mann. We're now going to get into discussion on this topic. So in your discussion, in your responses, you can respond specifically as a rebuttal to something that's been said, or you can use what's been said as a jumping off point to discuss something in your own platform. Okay. We're going to do speakers list style. So if you'd like to say something, raise your hand. Aisa will take note, and she will determine the order. So anyone who'd like to speak, whoever didn't get to speak first so far will get priority in this case. Yeah. Mr. Dowdall.
My question for Mr. Mann is, I like the idea of getting the course evaluations out there. Do you think this is some kind of project we could work in collaboration with the Teaching Awards Committee, given that they already audit and evaluate profs for recognition?
I believe that...
We're just going to move down the speakers list, and if you put your hand up, you'll... Yeah. Okay. And who was next? Mr. Haman. Oh, he was. Okay. My apologies.
Okay, I was hoping David would go on to elaborate on how the teaching would come about for the TAs, whether they'd be required mandatorily before they were hired. Just if you could specify the means you plan on doing that.
Mr. Fahey?
So I suppose it's a general comment for all three of you. 3 letters, FWI, for Different Integrity. I'd like to know how you guys want to get the union behind Patrick Dean in going forward with his vision, and how you think that will further better students. Like, how can the Students' Union get behind him? Because we have to pressure the Senate in his vision of experiential learning, for example.
Mr. Campbell.
I'll try and answer both those questions very quickly. The TAs, there definitely would be no requirement for teaching before hiring, or yes, sorry, for the tutorials before hiring. rather it would be something in addition. It would be probably an online module, at least at first, until more capacity could be built in to have in-person training. As for Forward with Integrity, the VP Education actually posted on different candidates' walls asking this exact question. Since I don't have time right now, I'd really encourage people to check out my response there.
Adrian?
Mr. Emmanuel.
My question, just my comment, is directed at Mr. Campbell. In terms of the teaching chair, I just have two questions. How long will it take, and how do we convince faculties to pay for it? Because they're going to have to either hire somebody or find someone to focus away from research where money comes from. So how would we convince faculties to actually go along with this?
James?
Mr. Dowdall.
My question is directed at Mr. Campbell in regards to the TA training. Having worked as a TA for the last 2 years, I've noticed that despite my lack of training, what's helped my students succeed is actually the interaction level between TAs, profs, and students, and that the students that interact with me do a lot better. How would you seek to address the way profs and TAs interact with each other beyond training?
Yeah, so max 2 rebuttals in this round, so it's a lot to cover in 30 seconds, but Mr. Campbell?
So first of all, on the TAs, I understand your point. I absolutely think that's important, and I think the training is a first step towards that. So when you talk about having good interactions between students and TAs, I think TAs being properly trained. I was also a teaching assistant, and being trained in how to do that properly is a great first step. As for teaching chairs, I don't know the exact timeline. There's actually an extensive USA paper, Ontario Undergraduate Student Alliance paper, which we're a member of, which there's a link to on my website where you can check out their recommendations, and they also give specifics on what the cost will be and as well as the feasibility.
Thanks. Mr. Brodka.
Just in response to the Forward with Integrity question, the Forward with Integrity actually had a very significant influence on when I was forming my platform. In terms of reciprocity, it was about the energy exchange. Cross-faculty and interdisciplinary learning is a huge part of how we can improve student experience, as highlighted by Forward with Integrity. That's why we proposed the Freedom Credit. I feel like it did have a massive impact on my platform, especially the proposals done by the student experience. Not the student experience, the student experience task force. Sorry.
Anyone else on the list? Okay. Anyone else want to say anything? Mr. Emmanuel.
Cool. Sorry about that. One thing I heard when I was coming into Mac for my first year was your undergraduate degree is worth absolutely nothing. It's a stepping stone to you getting to grad school, med school, law school, etc. at all. That sucks. That really, really sucks. And I think in the end, if I do make my way through and the Space Marine Empire comes to fruition, your undergraduate degree becomes your citizenship into the Empire, and not only will it not suck, it'll become epic and awesome, and we will take over the world. So, yeah.
Yeah, so I just want to bring it back to what we can do with an SRA, where we've got more students engaged in the SRA pushing forward ideas which we can move forward to. And the way I consider the president's role is that to work upon the motions carried forward by the SRA. Now, on the other hand, back to Forward with Integrity, I mean, there's possibility of pushing for the Students' Union to have credits so people can do projects and get credits for them in the Students' Union. What do you think of that?
It's time. Mr. Mann, I think, was on. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I got a little confused about the answering order. I still have to answer James's question. In terms of combining it with the teaching awards comment, I don't think it would be a good idea, especially because the experience we're trying to collect is from the student's perspective, whereas going through a teacher's award, although some students do submit answers there and feedback there, it would be a lot more direct to get the student's opinion from them personally. In terms of the FWI, I don't necessarily feel there should be redundancy at McMaster when there's one group that's already trying to make a change, and then for us to go in and say, ignore our own paths, to say, okay, we're just going to push that extra.
That's time, thanks. And that's it for the list? Yeah. Okay, next question. Students pay a lot of money every year for their education, both in tuition and ancillary fees. How does your platform ensure either that students aren't paying higher fees than they should be, whether they're getting their money's worth for the fees that they are paying. Now, this is going to take us back a few questions ago, but we're going to go to Mr. Fahey, who is interested in lobbying to decrease tuition fees, and back to Mr. Campbell, who wants to address MAP's summer fees. Mr. Fahey?
So, you mentioned lobbying there. The lobbying is one aspect of it, certainly. You know, we can lobby the university, we can lobby the province, but there's also extra parliamentary activism which we can engage in, and I think I personally believe in free education. I believe education should be a right, not just a privilege. But translating those sorts of ideas into a wider movement where people in society realise that change is possible, I think is where we can use the Students' Union to fight for that goal, right? And so it's not just lobbying, it's about building a movement which is going to engage in every layer of society and talk about these issues. And that involves organising on campus, getting students engaged with their union, getting involved into their society and changing things rather than just lobbying.
Thanks. Mr. Campbell.
So I've had a bit of an opportunity to talk about summer fees already, and I'll come back to them in a minute. But I think it's also a very legitimate question. What is the MSU doing to address rising, crippling tuition? And actually, as it happens this year, the MSU, through our membership with USA, our Ontario lobbying group, actually took the position of asking the provincial government for a tuition freeze. And this was a big move, and a move that hadn't been made by our organization in a long time, but which united us with other major student lobbying organizations across the country, but particularly in Ontario, asking our provincial government for a tuition freeze. Unfortunately, that was derailed when the Premier resigned, but I look forward to getting back to that. Again, that being said, the MSU should also look to what it can directly affect. And right now, that is summer fees. We can lower summer fees this year, and I would really look forward to the opportunity to do that.
Great. And in the future, we can branch off another platform points, but let's try to stick to the one that was mentioned and save rebuttals for the later period. So now, time for discussion. Speakers list. We can start now. Mr. Emmanuel.
I go first. So in terms of my platform, I believe student fees will become essentially student taxes. I know people don't like the word taxes, but you have to pay for things so that things can happen. So student fees will go towards the building of the Space Marine military, the Space Marine space program, creating these sweet deep Vs we're going to have. And I think in that sense, students will know what's going on and care about why they're spending their money, and that's key for me.
Mr. Brodka.
My concern is regarding the MAP summer fees. In my conversation with David Wilkinson, our provost, he said that it will be possible to address something like this after a general meeting February 5th, in spite of what's happened recently. I guess my concern is that it's possible to take care of this prior to the term of the 2013-2014 president. I don't know how it's relevant to the position, if it's possible to address that now, before the start of the next school year.
Mr. Mann.
Going back to the original two respondents, it's easy to say that we need more student clubs, more student counselors, but bringing down tuition, how are we going to address the rising costs for these things? How are we going to make sure we don't take away from clubs or other student services that are really integral and only available at McMaster? Further to that, mentioning USA, the USA directly what USA is doing directly comes out of the Drummond report, which the OLA has seen frequently.
And that's time. Thanks, Mr. Mann.
James?
Mr. Dowdall.
So Jacob kind of touched on this already. With the CFMU referendum happening right now that went kind of unnoticed for what I've been told 5 years now, and with the MAPS fee going unnoticed, why is it being addressed now? How come the board of directors this year didn't attempt to deal with the MAPS fee throughout their term? Why wait till now?
David?
Mr. Campbell?
Well, so there's two separate questions to that. First of all, in regards to the CFMU fee and why wasn't that addressed, that is being addressed. It's being brought to referendum, and we were the first board of directors in years. Like you said, this has been an ongoing problem, and we were the first ones to address this. In terms of the summer fees and how come they weren't addressed earlier, actually this came to my attention late in the fall, and ever since then we've been working very hard to get everyone in the room to work out an agreement for this, and we just weren't able to get a hold of the Association for Part-Time Students. It became clear that nothing was going to happen without a student mandate.
Thanks.
Adrian?
Mr. Emmanuel?
In preparation for this campaign, in preparation for the creation of the empire, I went onto the MSU website looking for the MSU budget for the last few years. It took me almost an hour to find the stupid thing. If we're going to talk about tuition fees and how we're spending it, we need to make a big deal about making sure students know what they're spending on. I really wasn't aware that I was paying that much for the CFMU fee, and I wanted to see how much we were paying and spending on 1280. I think clarity and just tearing apart red tape is key.
That's it for the speakers list, but not all the secretaries and leaders.
Okay. Mr. Campbell?
So I just wanted to touch on the student fee, on the summer fees again, because I think that's a very important question I didn't quite have time to address. What I was talking about with the student mandate is that presidentials are an incredible time to raise awareness of issues among students. While the president has the ability to unilaterally tear up this agreement, it didn't make sense to do that without having had the proper opportunity to consult with all the groups. That was why it became clear when that consultation couldn't take place that it was time to take this to the students and show what a priority it was to the students to save those fees and not be treated unfairly in this way.
Thanks.
James?
Mr. Dowdall? Sure.
I think you
on
touched
the topic.
you touched on a great point there, Adrian, of financial transparency of the MSU. The fact that it takes over a solid 2 hours to really understand the MSU budget that doesn't speak well to our ability to remain financially transparent. The fact that it took 5 boards, 5 SRAs, 5 budgets to recognize the CFMU problem also speaks to the fact that that's a problem. The fact that we're still waiting for maps, even though that's now a conversation, we have to do that later. I think the MSU needs to push towards more financial transparency, and I did release a blog post on that, so I hope people get the chance to read that.
Dan?
Mr. Fahey?
Yeah, just continue about how easy it is to use the website. I mean, it's very hard to navigate between hundreds of different PDF files on the I'm getting a smile of everybody here. It really is difficult to navigate between hundreds of different PDF files online, especially if you're trying to see our union, which is meant to be accountable for us. So let's look at a task force in making the website easy to use. Not a full change in it, just make it easy to use, make it more accountable.
It's time, thanks. Anyone else for a second time? That's it?
Jacob?
Nope. Okay. Next question then. How will you build a better, stronger community of students here on campus? And again, we have a question about student life coming a little later, but this is about a community of students. We're going to go to 2 people. Mr. Dowdall, which is to promote cultural diversity on campus. And Mr. Brodka has a few points. CFMU promotion, Mac 101 classes, and student art in the Student Center. Mr. Dowdall.
So, yes, my platform talks about the cultural diversity of our campus because I'm a strong believer that a culturally diverse campus not only adds to student experience, but helps us learn about what something that means nothing to us, how much it means to something else. And I think it's really important that we do that. My plan as president is currently to start building stronger relationships with our clubs. A lot of our clubs feel like they're not a part of these conversations. Looking at the Wentworth House relocation this year, conversation regarding the needs of the space only started happening this term with the MSA, the Photography Club, and Max Cycle. And those conversations need to happen earlier. I think the MSU needs to work on developing its connections with its clubs. It needs to make sure those clubs feel like they are the experts and that we are recognizing their expertise that they bring to the table when it comes to advocating for students from those cultural backgrounds.
The way that I look to support, I guess, student experience and the way that I want to improve it on campus is by actually recognizing the diverse, I guess, skills on campus and from our students. In terms of Mac 101 classes, I tried to think of a unique way that clubs and groups on campus would be able to showcase what it is that they do, because I feel like following things like Clubs Fest, we're always trying to push for more clubs promotion and unique ways for our student groups to push what it is they have. That's an avenue to do that. Student Art in Musk is about recognizing our artists on campus. They do incredible work, but there's no traffic and direction for students to turn their attention to that. Change Forum seeks to, I guess, engage students through discussion and see what it is they want on campus. CFMU promotion, it's about making services relevant again. All things that I think will improve student life on campus.
Okay, now for discussion. Speakers list, is it? Mr. Campbell.
Great, thank you. I really appreciate this question, because one of the things I made a focus on in the last debate was talking about how the MSU is typically spoken of as having services and advocacy, but something that's so often forgotten is our responsibility to foster community and tradition. And that's why I brought up homecoming, and maybe that will come up later, so I'll leave it for now. But just wanted to, commend the question. I think community is a part fostering community is a part of the MSU that's too often forgotten.
Mr. Mann.
I absolutely agree with James's idea of bringing clubs together, but in terms of cultural diversity, don't you feel that that the international office already does enough of that?
I feel like they have... Oh, sorry. Can I go?
Is that Mr. Dowdall? Is he up? Oh, Mr. Emmanuel.
Sorry.
Sure. Mr. Dowdall.
I apologize for that. I think they do a lot for students already, but I feel like the MSU could step up its game. It can get involved and help supporting the events they're running, because while they can start supporting clubs and while they can get involved in doing things, we also have our own clubs that are the MSU clubs, the MSU Muslim Student Association with the MSU McMaster Hillel. I think stepping up to support them where they feel they need their help is important to me, and making sure that they feel their voice is being heard and that we are advocating for them is important.
Mr. Emmanuel.
In terms of building community, I've already pushed a few things ahead. For example, the mandatory uniform of the Sweet Deep V. I think another tool that we should use to build community is right here where we are, the SIL, and Jacob mentioned the CFMU, the MSU website. I think all these things will become my voice on campus, so that you can hear what I'm saying and agree with it, because that's really your only choice in the matter, and that's what we should use it for.
Anyone else? Yeah. Yeah, you get 2 rebuttals. Yeah. Sure, Mr. Mann.
My question is, you said that you want to get clubs engaged and bring them all together. How will you go about doing that? What is your point form plan on?
And yeah, Mr. Dowdall?
My idea at the minute is working with the diversity services of the MSU and strengthening relationships with the clubs to find out what kind of events they're running and how we can step up to help promote their events. The idea that was presented to me by a student recently was that campus events, their specialty is planning events, running events, and why shouldn't student clubs be able to go to them, say, hey, we're running an event. We don't really know what's the best way of doing it. Can you give us some advice? Maybe working with campus events to start up some kind of like consultation program would be great in getting those clubs events out there and more publicity.
No more on the list? Mr. Brodka?
In terms of clubs and group promotion, that's obviously a huge issue for the groups on campus, at least the ones I've consulted with. It's about getting their name out there and getting what they do out there following major events. I feel like CFMU, they claim on their website that it's an avenue for clubs to promote themselves. I don't think that's true when majority of students don't know that we even have a campus radio station. So I feel like if you associate a brand and create an event, it generates buzz and gets students excited about whatever it is clubs are doing.
Mr. Emmanuel.
I want to kudos to David for mentioning homecoming, and earlier in the week we met with the IRC. James mentioned something about Welcome Week. What he mentioned was reducing the academic part of it. Homecoming and Welcome Week should be used to build community build community on campus, build community within students, and establish some traditions. I feel like if other schools on North America and across the world have traditions, have old songs and stories they sing, things they do, we should have that too.
Anyone else? Nope. Okay. Let's move on to the next question. Question is, how will your platform make the MSU's governance and administration more accountable to students? We'll go to three people on this one. First, Mr. Emmanuel, who believes that all power should lie with the emperor of the MSU, which will be him. Mr. Fahey believes that the entire board of directors should be elected by the whole MSU membership rather than the VPs being elected by the SRA. And Mr. Brodka, who makes points about anti-office hours and merit-based pay. Mr. Emmanuel.
All right. Do you like making decisions? Do you think it makes your life easier? I find that it doesn't for most people. I like making decisions, and that's why I'm putting myself in charge here. It'll make things smoother. It'll make things easier. It'll make things more accountable. Because while you'll know what I decide and know how things go, the accountability lies in the fact that I'm the boss and I'm accountable to really only myself. So I'll decide what's good and what's not good for you guys. It'll make things simpler in the MSU. It'll make things run smoother. And I think in the end, it'll make McMaster a more efficient and more well-run empire.
Mr. Fahey.
So, with 35 members on the SRA, there's approximately 700 students for every one of them to represent. I think that's too many people for one person to sort of, for even you to know personally who your representative is on the Students' Union. So if you were to consider enlarging the SRA, you could have much fewer students who each one of them could know who their representative is to the Students' Union. But also, in terms of the website, as I mentioned before, it's very hard to navigate. Dozens of PDFs per page, and to try and cross-reference back and forth meetings that you've not been to. I think there's massive potential really to use the online tools we have to be able to have an executive summary of what occurred this week in the union.
That's time.
Okay,
thanks. Hi, Mr. Brodka.
Merit-based salary and anti-office hours are meant to address the concerns of, like you said, accountability and also relevance through being relatable for the students that you represent. I find that the role becomes very private, at least from a student's perspective, following the election period. And I just like to take it back to those grassroots conversations that we as candidates are having right now. Those one-on-one interactions are, at least I know, what inspired me to run. And that's something I want to always have throughout my term. In terms of accountability, I feel like the merit-based salary would be a wonderful introduction because job review is something that's incorporated into positions all over the world. So why not incorporate it into a position that involves, student representation?
Now for discussion. Who would like to speak? Mr. Emmanuel.
Sure. At J. Beebs over here. In terms of the merit-based salary, how would things in terms of merit need to be quantified? So how would you quantify merit? What would determine a candidate had done a good job? Because I feel like if we just ask people, they'll say, you know what, just keep the money here. We can use it for my thing, regardless of whether you do things or not. I wouldn't really trust polls, and I wouldn't really trust the citizens to make good decisions, which is part of my platform. So how would you measure merit?
Merit would be measured basically on all the aspects of the role of president. So that's advocacy, student representation, and also what people see for face value, fulfilling platform points.
And just a quick reminder, we'll just check with the speakers list before direct responses. Anyone else on the list? Anyone else would like to be on the list for this one? Mr. Dowdall.
I think the merit-based salary is a fantastic idea because it really does push the president to be more accountable. Would you consider following some kind of model, much like the MES, where they have an open forum in which any student can raise concerns and then the VPs, their board, addresses that readily? And also, do you say 50? Would you think 15% is too small, whereas Guelph does 50%, I believe?
Mr. Brodka.
In terms of student feedback, that's why I wanted to introduce the Change Forum, because though there are smaller avenues like through ad hoc committees and things like that gather student feedback on ideas that are being brought forward, I feel like there's no real way to generate grassroots discussion. So that's where the Change Forum comes from. In terms of the allotment of the percentage, I do think that it is a fair amount.
Any other speakers? Okay. Next question. Mental health can be a problem for a lot of students. Many get stressed out, overwhelmed, and even depressed at university. What would you do for these students? We'll go to Mr. Dowdall, who wants shorter wait times at the Student Wellness Center and weekly Stress Buster Week events. And Mr. Mann, who wants to address students who abandon their career goals for mental health reasons. Mr. Dowdall.
So there are two aspects of my platform that talk about mental health. The first one was actually inspired by a conversation with a student regarding the Student Wellness Center and how she believed that reducing wait times could be supplemented by introducing a new counselor. And I believe it'd be fantastic to see the MSU starting to support them, maybe introduce our helping support the introduction of a new counselor down there would be fantastic in reducing wait times. That being said, I'd like to open up a dialogue with them to find out where their expertise is on this and how they feel they can improve that. Regarding Stress Busters, the MSU advocacy team did a fantastic job this year of hosting Stress Week, which was brilliant. I loved it. I enjoyed every single event. And I want to take that kind of week and I want to make it an all-year-round program because students are stressed all year. So what I want to host is events with the MSU president where I'll be out there interacting with students in a very social way. Takes kind of like the professionalism away from it while allowing students to address concerns and also relax and avoid school through events like cooking or video games and stuff like that.
Yep. And Mr. Mann.
Recently, the Queen's University came out with the Queen's Report on Mental Health, where they identified 4 pyramids of what the university needs to do in terms of improving mental health, one of which is greater access points, places that students have to go to be able to receive that mental health care. My point of view is that we need to have TAs and teachers be able to identify students who might have mental health issues by signs such as having late assignments and be able to push them towards supports as another access point. Another would be developing a pre-med and pre-law society. We have a couple of them, but we need to bring them together and have them address student issues in terms of following through with their career goals.
Great. Time for discussion. Any speakers? Mr. Brodka.
Just addressing, I guess, platforms in general, I find that at this time of year, a lot of students just take things for face value, and if something is absent from your platform, it means that you've neglected, I guess, the topic altogether. Mental health is something that's definitely on my radar, and if I was elected president, I would definitely continue to work towards, I guess, making improvements in that area on campus.
Mr. Campbell.
So on a similar note, actually, to Mr. Brodka, the campaign platform point from Mr. Dowdall about the Student Wellness Center is something that I had talked about myself as a primary campaign point last year, and was so happy about the feedback I got and still really believe in that. The wait times at the Student Wellness Center are just too long. And I had a great question the other day from someone asking why I didn't include that again. And part of the reason is that I think it's really important we focus on continuing the strong programs we have in the MSU right now, particularly the Pink Elephant campaign and the Train of Welcome Rate programs.
Thanks. Mr. Emmanuel.
Oh dear. Save the water. This is a topic a little near and dear to my heart, as I had a bit of a mental health crisis near the end of the term. I'm not afraid to share it because it's a big deal. There's really 3 things I want to address here. SHEC and COPE are 2 clubs and associations who I think can have a big effect on this, so training and whatnot. The Women and Trans Center that is being put forward and being wants to be built, I think should get a little love in this sense as well. And working on reducing stigma, the Pink Elephant program was great for training.
Thanks. Speakers. Mr. Mann.
I believe that currently clubs and clubs and societies are doing a good enough job on their own addressing mental health, and MSU should take an outside approach, first bringing them together, and secondly adding more events such as petting zoos during exams, just things in general to bring up the student spirit, especially during exam times.
Mr. Dowdall.
I agree. We have some fantastic clubs on campus, ranging from COPE, SHEC, Motivation for McMaster, all do a fantastic job in advocating for mental health awareness. And I think definitely continuing that conversation is important and giving them our support. This was something you did address last year, David, and it came up again this year, hence why I included it. And I was surprised to see the Board of Directors not continue that kind of conversation this year and push for shorter wait times in the health center.
More speakers? Mr. Campbell.
Just a quick response to that. We actually have continued conversations on that, and that's been a priority all year. Dr. Phil Wood, who's the Dean of Students, is also very passionate about student wellness, student mental health on campus. He's done a lot of work on that over his tenure, and it was something we continued to work on and work with him on this year. But also a lot of our focus was taken up on things that we could directly affect. Like I said, the Pink Elephant campaign and particularly the training of Welcome Week reps in mental health awareness this year for the first time.
Any other speakers? Okay. Next question. Campus capacity is a big issue at McMaster. Students who have a difficult time studying at home need space on campus to work, but our libraries and other student spaces are often overcrowded. How does your platform address that problem? First, Mr. Campbell, who's pushing for longer library hours and maintenance to the student center for more seating and more outlets. Mr. Brodka wants to relocate the off-campus lounge out of Wentworth House, which is being demolished. And Mr. Dowdall wants to strike a library assessment committee and fight for Musk room study space that's bookable. Mr. Campbell.
Yeah, so this, not surprisingly, these are actually two of the points that I've been getting the most student feedback on. Library hours, first of all, libraries are open just flat out not long enough right now. Mills Learning Commons, which was once open 24/7, is now closed by 11 p.m. on the weekends. And Thode was open 24/7 last semester, but only during exams. And this just isn't enough time to meet our needs as students, and so that has definitely been a priority of mine. And the other thing you mentioned was the Student Center. The Student Center also was built 10 years ago for a much different student population. It was a drastically lower student population and a population which frankly didn't use laptops and cell phones in the way we do now. So there's a shortage of seating and there's a shortage of outlets specifically. And I think there are a lot of creative ways we can deal with this problem, and there's a lot of money in reserve with the Student Center right now that we can use on this. And I'd look forward to working on that more.
Mr. Brodka.
The reason why I noted my platform point as being campus capacity is because it's an all-encompassing issue. There are so many aspects of it that the role of president should be consciously aware of. It's not just library hours in particular. There's, I guess, space in general. And I feel like as opposed to library hours, it should be, is there enough space allocated during peak times, during those exam times, because that's a pressing issue. In terms of the Wentworth House that's being torn down, I know that there's already been discussion about and advocacy on behalf of the fact that we do need to find spaces for the students that are already using that area. In terms of library hours specifically, I'd like to give a shout out to James Dowdall's point on library assessment review committees, because again, it addresses the concern that there's more issues than just one specifically that we should be focusing on.
And Mr. Dowdall.
Awesome. Thank you, Jacob. The Library Assessment Committee was something that was inspired not just by ideas at other universities, but here at home. We have a committee at the university level, but what's not happening with it is students aren't on it. It's consisting of the Vice President of Education, the FIC chair. What I want to see is I want to see a more empowered committee, because they're more concerned simply than just 24-hour study space. There are policies that are in place in the libraries that a lot of students disagree with sometimes. There are also just simple problems, like whenever they're renovating mills to build in new study space, they're also taking away study space that some students used to use. I think making sure a dialogue between students and the library administration is important, because I feel like library administration also wants to hear their voice heard in this, and I think it's important to recognize that they're employees, they have lives, and they're not also students, and they also have important concerns. In terms of study space, I brought that up because I like studying tutorial rooms, and it sucks when I get kicked out of them because I'm not allowed to be in there, and so I'd like to work with the university to challenge this idea that rooms have one purpose and one purpose only.
Discussion? Any speakers on the matter? Mr. Brodka.
My question, I don't know if it's a concern or question, goes to Mr. Campbell, and it's in regards to the student student center improvement. I know that the $1.1 million that's being, tossed around and discussed is going to be allocated before the end of this school year. Can you just touch on that and explain how exactly the money will be used?
Mr. Emmanuel.
Sorry, I have a very simple solution to campus space and availability of space. We just take the space from other campuses. So part of my platform is the annexation of Mohawk College, which is a simple matter. We'll just show up and they'll surrender to our mighty greatness. And then the second part of that, following up, is the invasion of Western University. We will develop a military force. That's going to take a bit of time. President for life, it'll help. And then we will go in, claim the space for ourselves, and claim their citizens too. It'll work out.
It's time. Mr. Fahey.
I think one of the biggest barriers in getting, organising groups on campus, I've found at least, is the amount of time it takes to book a room, and especially if you're not associated with a club or you're an individual that wants to get engaged. It's really hard to book a room, and especially since the student centre is a separate body from the union, there seems to be multiple layers of bureaucracy you have to go through. So I think I'll leave it there. Yeah, what do you guys think about that?
Mr. Campbell.
So in terms of the money for student center improvements being allocated before the end of this year, that's actually not true. There's $1.1 million in reserve, and the committee in charge of it has been in conversations for a while about allocating some of it, and those conversations have stalled at the level of conversations. They're continuing, but I'd want to see those accelerated, and as I've said before, the focus is not just spending the money, the focus is making sure that that money is being spent on our needs.
Mr. Dowdall.
Thanks for bringing that up, Dan. You're very much right. It's horrifying to book space in Musk, and I think definitely working towards breaking down the red tape behind that is one of my priorities. I also want to speak to, again, the importance of this library assessment committee, because the 24-hour site space isn't the only concern, and this committee would allow people to address their concerns, such as when the laptop lending program is being discontinued. This would allow those students to say, hey, I like that program, please don't get rid of it. It also affords library employees who are also students to have a voice in what happens with their libraries.
Mr. Emmanuel.
Near the end of the weekend, or beginning of the weekend, I had a chat with one of the facility services. They told me that they were more than happy with having people in classrooms, for example, in BSB, but you'd find that students just left filthy messes. And if we want to use these spaces and take care of it, we're gonna have to, take care of them. So I think until we can handle using the spaces, we as in citizens, I don't think we should get them until we can prove that we deserve it.
Mr. Mann.
Sorry. I again want to commend James for his library committee. It's a wonderful idea. And I want to
please speak right into the mic.
And I want to rebuke Dan for the Musk issue. I'm, as one of the few students who on a regular basis books in the student center, I have never had any problems, and I found that they're very open, especially in terms of exam time, on a first-come, first-served basis to lend out rooms and spaces. So have you personally had any experience in that, and what made you raise your point?
Mr. Fahey?
So I think when I first started here, I was trying to book rooms, and not being part of a group, I wasn't actually able to. Now, I later learned that I could get in touch with other groups who had rooms already booked, and the problem was resolved. But I still think there needs to be a function implemented where, as an individual member of the Students' Union, you can book a room. Because at the moment there isn't. You can speak to people, but it's not a formalised procedure.
Mr. Campbell.
Thank you. So I actually have a question for Mr. Dowdall. You've talked about a library assessment committee, but also mentioned how there is already one in place, and it does have student representation on it through the Vice President of Education and first-year council chair. So I'm just curious what the functionality or structure would be different with with the university library committee you'd like to see as opposed to the one that already exists?
Mr. Dowdall?
Fantastic question, because the committee does already exist. I'd like to model a newer one based on not only the way the SRA committees are set up, but also based on the one that's currently set up at McGill. McGill has a Library Improvement Fund Committee, which dictates the expenditure of over $2 billion on library improvements every year. That incorporates students, faculty, library administration, library staff, and their board of directors. I think opening up the conversations I've already developed with them to make a similar committee here, whose purpose is not to dictate money expenditures, but to dictate how the libraries are improved, would be important, and I think they'd be a key step in doing that.
More speakers? Nope. Okay. Next question. What would you do to make McMaster a more inclusive campus? We're going to go to Fahey and Mann on this one. Mr. Fahey talks about how SRA caucuses should be formed for marginalized groups. And Mr. Mann, among other things, believes McMaster should include Braille and sign language classes. Go ahead, Mr. Fahey.
Yeah, so at the moment we have an SRA which is predominantly male, but the Students' Union needs to have a proper focus on being representative of students, and yeah, these caucuses, which I've mentioned in my platform, I think it's important that not only do they have members of the SRA on them, but are also open to students from across the campus to be involved in. The other platform point I made was that to have specific seats on the SRA for currently disadvantaged groups on campus. And whilst I think that that's a short-term step towards making sure that their views are heard, it is certainly one which would see a lot of good benefit here in McMaster.
And Mr. Mann.
I want to say the SAS at this point currently does a wonderful job accommodating students with special needs. The issue is that there's a big stigma for those of us who don't have special needs or who haven't had experience with handicaps, where we don't know what questions to ask. We don't know, for example, how a blind person goes on living day to day, how they cook, how they do their laundry. At the moment, the Students for Barrier-Free Access at the University of Toronto, they offer free sign language classes and free Braille classes for people to be able to come in and learn about those issues. I would like to see workshops in the future where we have people with handicaps and access issues coming and talking about their issues openly to close that gap between all students at this university.
Okay. Responses? Yeah.
I think that inclusivity starts with, I guess, supporting the diverse range of students we have at the school and creating a dialogue with them to make sure that their needs are met. And that's what I hope to achieve through Mac 101 classes and the Change Forum.
Mr. Campbell?
Just since it hasn't been mentioned yet, I'd just like to give a quick shout out to the Women and Trans Center Committee, working on looking at whether we can form a Women and Trans Center on campus. The really ideal part about this committee for myself is that there have been discussions about a Women and Trans Center on campus for years, and finally soon we should have a proposal we can look at to see actually whether this is something we want to improve or approve.
Speakers? Mr. Emmanuel.
Inclusivity on campus is key. I believe that every citizen of the Space Marine Empire has value and potential to contribute to the glory of the Empire. So finding ways to include every citizen, regardless of who they are, and what, regardless of who they are, they should find a place in the Empire. So working on podcasts within lecture halls, I think there's 5 out of 30-something lecture halls actually have podcast tech, which is... So that's one thing. And okay. Come on, guys. Another thing, I guess, would be working on that Women and Trans Center, working on meeting the needs of students that are disadvantaged or just not mentioned as much.
More speakers? Yep, Mr. Mann.
The closing down of Wentworth House has really damaged a great part of our university, especially in terms of the Muslim Student Association. We've taken point to displace an entire population from their prayer area, and we have to put them in places where it's a little insulting to pray, such as the gym or the temporary buildings. The MSU is responsible for this, and we really need to get in there and fix that.
Mr. Dowdall?
That's a great point, bringing up the Wentworth House and the MSA. They all invited us to speak, I believe, at their Friday prayer, which I'd like to say thank you to them. I cannot imagine how important that time is for them. I can't imagine how difficult it is for them losing somewhere they've been for so long. It's been a part of their community. It's been a part of what it means to feel at home here at McMaster. And I know that if I'm elected, I intend on recontinuing those conversations to make sure that their needs are met in terms of their spaces, because I believe there was a bit of a failure in terms of that this year.
More speakers? Okay. Next question then. Question is simple. How will you improve student life at McMaster? We're going to go to Mr. Emmanuel, who wants to convert 1280 into an alternative dance facility. Then to Mr. Dowdall, who discusses the student housing seal of approval as well as the 12-month bus pass. And then to Mr. Campbell to talk about bigger homecoming with a free concert as well as a shuttle bus service. Mr. Emmanuel.
The 1280 issue will address not only just student life, but inclusivity, transparency in terms of finances, all sorts of things. This alternative dance facility will open up so many possible venues for students to express themselves. Not only will it provide jobs for students who will be managing it, working there, performing. It'll provide a place for students to de-stress and relax in between classes or at night. We can be inclusive in terms of having various performers, a ladies' night, men's night, have it like a drag show, have wings. I think that's a key feature, having wings at 1280. And I think the number one thing, the reason why I really like my idea of the alternative dance facility is following up on UFT. Their outing to the Oasis Lounge in Toronto, where they showed that they were sex positive, and I think that's also key for McMaster.
Great, Mr. Dowdall.
So I've already mentioned the seal of approval for off-campus housing and why that came up this year, which was simply because had I known more about my property manager, I would not have lived in the house I would. I would have convinced my housemates to find somewhere else to live. I think it's important students feel safe in their own home here, living so far away from campus, from their family, and so helping students get more informed about who they're living with. It's an important thing to me. Having moved here from out of province, I know what it's like to be so far from home, and it's just about trying to find somewhere safe here on campus.
And the bus pass, would you like to talk about?
Oh, yeah, sorry. I forgot about the bus pass. The all-year bus pass, the idea currently isn't to enforce an all-year bus pass on all students, because what I want to do is, having worked here in the summer, I would have had to pay $400 for a summer bus pass, which is horrifyingly expensive, whereas the GSA is currently spending an extra $60 on top of what we're spending to accommodate an all-year bus pass. And with the end of our agreement with HSR coming up, I don't like to open up a dialogue of some kind of option for a more affordable summer pass for students who want to work and explore Hamilton during the summer.
And Mr. Campbell.
So this is sort of a tough question because it is almost so broad to talk about student life. But like you said, there are 2 points on my platform that I've designated specifically as student experience, and those are a bigger homecoming and a shuttle bus service. The bigger homecoming, first of all, I've looked around at other universities and seen the size of homecoming and the quality of experience they have there, and just thought that with our homecoming we could do so much more. We could make it more than just a football game where we serve chili beforehand, although I do really love homecoming, or love football and chili. But we could turn it into a weekend which showcases all that McMaster has to offer, with our clubs, with more events, with the revamp of our sidewalk sale from Welcome Week, and then with a concert that is taken from being one that students have to pay for and making it free. And the second point is the shuttle bus service, which we had some time to go into earlier, and I don't have as much time right now, but which would help really students get to places that right now the HSR just isn't properly servicing.
Great. Discussion? Speakers? And Mr. Brodka.
Like Mr. Campbell mentioned, I feel like student life is such a broad topic. I feel like my platform points in Mac 101 classes, energy exchange, campus capacity. I feel like they will all directly impact student life. And as I mentioned before, just because something isn't necessarily incorporated into a platform doesn't mean it's off your radar. I feel like things like making things like homecoming or just supporting all of our athletic programming in general are things that should be something that the president should strive for every single year. We should always seek to improve what we've done in the past.
Who's next? Anyone? Mr. Mann.
I think one of the ways to improve student life on campus is to introduce accountability where there isn't, especially in terms of the ombudsman, a place to go where you want to complain and have that complaint seen through all the way to the end. Essentially, the only point you have on campus at the moment is the Human Rights Commission, which is pretty limited. What we want to do is work with Parliament closely to make sure they improve the Ombudsman Act to include universities in the jurisdiction of the Ontario Ombudsman.
More speakers? Mr. Campbell.
Just a quick note that one of my favorite platform points I've heard from other candidates this campaign period has been the 12-month bus pass, particularly if it's optional for those students who are around in the summer. I've made the advocacy on behalf of summer students by the MSU an important part of my platform, and I think this would tie in well with it. I'm not positive that it's something that we'll be able to get from the HSR, but I definitely think it's a good ideal to be working toward.
Mr. Emmanuel.
James, you beat me to asking you about the bus pass. You basically clarified any questions I had, so curse you. But I just wanted to say another thing that would improve student life hugely, and I think this is just me start speaking as being a rep for the last a Welcome Week rep for the last 3 years, is improving Welcome Week, because a measure for me of how well we did in Welcome Week is how many people apply to be reps. And I think that building a community there and building student participation and like a care about Welcome Week will improve that.
Mr. Dowdall.
So yeah, I guess you touched back on my bus pass I was going to get back to, because someone addressed earlier this week asked me, "Why are you going to make me pay $180 for a bus pass that I don't necessarily want?" And no, that is not what I'm advocating for. What I'm advocating for is finding a way to give students the opportunity to take that bus pass, simply because having lived here in the summer and working for the university, spending $2.55 every day on the bus definitely broke my budget after a while, and having a more affordable pass in the summer that wasn't over $400 would be great. It would help me really explore the city, get down to Bayfront, go up Lock Street, hit up Stony Creek, go up the mountain, go to Webster's Falls. It would help me see the city more.
More speakers? Okay, next question. We're going to have one more question in this style, and I think we're going to take a couple from Twitter, one or two, and then on to the final questions. What would you do to make McMaster a more sustainable campus? We're going to go to Mr. Fahey to talk about fair trade and environmentally friendly coffee, as well as reusable water bottles and fountain maintenance. Then to Mr. Brodka to talk about his energy exchange idea. Then to Mr. Campbell to talk about initiatives with 1280. And then to Mr. Dowdall to talk about investing more in renewable energy on campus, as well as a two-sided printing policy for classes. So, Mr. Fahey.
So yeah, I think the points I made in the platform were on the theme of reduce, reuse, and recycle. And I thought they were very immediate platform points that people can understand. And whilst they are important, we do need to actually consider changing how we approach the entire environmental sustainability problem. I'm not sure if we're ready for that sort of conversation, and because we have still so far to go in terms of reducing, reusing, and recycling. But we should at least make the 3 R's easy to do for students, and that's why I've put the focus on making it easy to move away from, cardboard cups for coffee, and also making sure, we move towards using less plastic bottles. But I've seen
time.
On campus.
Thanks, Mr. Fahey.
All right. Okay.
Mr. Brodka.
I would first off like to commend Matt Green for the work that they do, and just like to mention that consultation with, I guess, different services and part-time managers is always important to ensure that we're continuing with sustainability and on that trend. The idea of the energy exchange actually stemmed from my start at the school with my involvement with Athens Rec. Coots Paradise is something that's amazing. It's something that where McMaster campus is plunged right in the middle of. People often comment on the fact that Hamilton isn't necessarily the nicest place, or that's how it appears. So this would be about making an incentive, a reciprocity program that would turn students' attention to Coots Paradise, get them involved, and at the same time get them exposed to athletic programming at the school.
Mr. Campbell.
So my platform point about campus sustainability, in particular our MSU businesses, was all about the fact that when we look at our MSU businesses, I feel that they should be leaders in sustainability on campus, reflecting the values of students. But instead, in many ways, they're falling behind. And so in particular with 1280, the 3 initiatives that I've talked about are more recycling, particularly on club nights with the plastic cups. More environmentally friendly takeout containers, as have been adopted at many of the other eateries across campus. And perhaps my favorite is more local food options. I just had someone messaging, a former McMaster student going to Dalhousie now, messaging me today about the amazing local food options at cheap prices that are available there and how much they value that. And I think if we could mirror that sort of initiative here, that would be a really amazing thing.
And Mr. Dowdall.
So my platform focuses on 2 points for sustainability, mainly renewable energy and a two-sided printing policy. The two-sided printing policy was actually started by a fourth-year environmental science intern who I lived with last year, and what she noted was that despite our introduction of these fleet printers so underground, many profs are still dictating one-sided pages only, which means printers are being taken off their sustainable options and onto being put on non-sustainable options. And so she wanted to see the university reduce its paper usage because it is off the charts at the minute. And I think working with Office of Sustainability on a policy that they're currently doing would really help to do that. And I think providing our support and developing our connections with the faculty would help that policy kind of like take place across the university. The other thing I talked about was renewable energy. Since 2010, renewable energy has actually become very, very affordable. I think it's something McMaster should start looking into. We are one of the best universities out there, and other student unions are investing in renewable energy, so I think we should be the best student union out there too by doing the same.
Great. And discussion. Anyone on the list? Mr. Emmanuel.
Thanks, Sam. The Space Marine Empire, being a long-term vision, so for the rest of my existence, will need a good, decent socioeconomic plan. Part of that economic plan is creating some sort of farm space on campus, so I think just demolishing what I've heard lovingly referred to as the student ghetto, and then turning that into farmland would be a good idea. Making use of the scientific wonder that is Coots Paradise for research, and creating that space program which will promote research in all various forms of science and environmental sustainability.
Mr. Fahey.
I wasn't going to say anything, but...
Oh. Okay.
That's all right. Who's next?
Would you like to?
No, that's okay.
Anyone else on the list? Mr. Dowdall.
One thing I'd like to see the MSU do is something modeled after another student union, and I can't for the life of me remember who it was, which is, they called it wandering green bins, which was near the end of every term, they put up green bins in their student center just for one day, and they took all the compost they built and used it for mulch or fertilizer for what was their community garden. I think it'd be cool if the MSU did something like that, where one day in April we started collecting compost and used that for our community garden to create more sustainable fertilizer or mulch. I'm not really sure what the difference is between those. So,
Mr. Emmanuel.
A myth I've been hearing from students, and it's a terrifying and possibly just really depressing myth, is that McMaster doesn't actually recycle. From what I've heard, and I don't know if this is true or not, I might have to ask DC about this, things we put in the recycling bin just get put into the same garbage, same containers as everything else, and then tossed in a landfill. I really, really hope this isn't true, and since you're on the board of directors, I'm going to direct this sort of at you just to see whether it is true or not, but if I'm elected, we're going to not.
Mr. Campbell.
Yeah, I had heard the exact same thing and went to the Office of Sustainability to ask them directly about that. And no, that's not true. The one instance in which that can be true is that you're not supposed to actually recycle the caps off your plastic bottles as well as the plastic bottles. And I have heard stories of when recycling is contaminated as a result of that, them not being properly recycled. But no, we actually work through a very good company, both with that and with our composting, who can deal with very high contamination rates and is very good about properly disposing.
Mr. Dowdall.
I'm just going to add to that because I heard that same rumor from someone sitting on the SRA who I live with, and I ended up talking to Matt Green. Matt Green said that no, McMaster does actually recycle, and that they're looking at producing some kind of little sticky to put above the blue bins that'll let you know what to put in here and what don't put in here, and if you do, it contaminates it and we don't recycle it. So I think that's a cool project that they're doing.
More speakers? No? Anyone else? Okay. Before we go to closing questions, why don't we take a question or two from Twitter? Do you want to just bring... Oh, Angie's got a mic.
Yeah, so this one is actually from our comment board on the actual live stream. Matt Jelly wants to know, how do you plan on better connecting students and McMaster to the broader Hamilton community?
Okay, so let's bypass that initial 1 minute stage, and we'll just go right to the 2 minute, the 2 per person rebuttal response, 30 seconds each. Anyone like to? Okay, Mr. Emmanuel.
Conquest. The simple answer is conquest. As a growing, burgeoning empire, the Space Marine Empire will need more land, more financial power, and more space just to work with. So I think taking the military force that we will build and just expanding into the rest of Hamilton and calling it part of the Space Marine Empire will be key for creating a better life for the citizens. And that's how we will connect better, by essentially swallowing it whole.
Mr. Mann.
Well, one of my campaign points is increasing interactions and partnerships with local businesses. Imagine McMaster has a large volume of students that's an attractive deal for businesses around the community. And not only can they profit from us, we can also profit directly from them by coming up with business ideas that benefit both students and the businesses, so that we can keep our money in Hamilton and have students pay less around the city.
Mr. Campbell.
I think the most relevant idea is the shuttle bus idea. This part of the intention of the shuttle bus would be to get students to Hamilton landmarks that are currently very difficult to reach. For example, I think many people don't even realize that Hamilton is the waterfall capital of the country, and but getting to a lot of the waterfalls is very, very difficult to do. And I think if we can make something like that easier, it really encourages exploration of the city and appreciation of the city as well.
Mr. Dowdall.
My project Macovation that I'm looking to put together is kind of geared towards this, where any student can come in with an idea for, maybe it's a business model, or maybe it's an app you want to develop for the iPhone, or maybe you just want to help develop your skills in some kind of field. You could come in, connect with a community partner who is willing to let you be his intern, he will mentor you, he or she will mentor you, or just volunteership or other job opportunities. This program is about connecting students with opportunities in our community that help develop academic skills, while giving them the networks they need, and the networks that will hopefully convince them to stay in Hamilton and contribute more to the city.
Mr. Brodka.
I think the first step to doing this is just connecting students to Hamilton culture and the Hamilton environment. David mentioned the waterfalls that we have here. There's amazing work being done with the RBG and the Coots the Escarpment project. It's about getting students immersed in that and also supporting existing advocacy projects that are in place. I know that fellow colleagues of mine, Student Success and Student Advocacy, are basically working to commit to doing pop the bubble campaigns where, again, they're exposing students to various elements of the Hamilton community.
Mr. Mann.
I think in terms of getting the waterfall in the nature deal, we're neglecting the outdoor club, which does very similar things. They're already in place there, and the MSU has no place to say more. Instead, shuttles would be very useful, for example, with Fortinos. Fortinos is already committed to students by providing shuttles on Wednesdays to go shopping right there by the Go Center, back and forth. We need more deals like that, as opposed to waterfalls.
Mr. Fahey.
So if we bring the power back to the Student Representative Assembly, on the one hand, there's a conduit there for student-led projects to take advantage of the resources of the university, but also to go back to, I'm on a course at the moment called Sustainable Future Project, where for on a 3 credit, I'm doing a project involving looking at the feasibility of bees, and there's other people on the course who are doing their own community projects. So I really want to push for the student union to lobby the university to have these sort of 3 credit options to get involved in local community.
Mr. Emmanuel.
I'd like to give a rather concrete example within my platform of how I would reach out to the Hamilton businesses. One of the businesses around is Allure Fitness. Now, the Allure Fitness has pole dancing lessons. I think if we connect performers at 1280, my alternative dance facility, with Allure Fitness, have some sort of partnership going, we can get students over there fit and learning a skill, and then coming back here and using that skill to, earn some money on the side.
Mr. Brodka.
I think it's really important that we connect with the actual city of Hamilton and just independent project groups that are already working to develop systems that is exposed, I guess, the population of Hamilton to what's in the city of Hamilton. I know that there's apps being developed. There's apps already developed for students to actually use them, go and explore. Hamilton's an amazing city, and we should really be promoting that.
Mr. Campbell.
So, Mr. Mann, you brought up a bus going to Fortino's as well, and as it happens, there is a shuttle bus that goes from campus to Fortino's. Okay, sorry, I thought you had, sorry that you'd skipped over that. But that's the sort of thing that I think this program could unite together as well and take many of those smaller programs and provide a single means through which we can know about them. Get Cultured is another one where I think this program can really support that program. Brian McAddy has expressed interest before in funding a bus that would support the Get Cultured program, and I definitely want to talk to him as part of this project. Sorry, didn't hear you say that.
Mr. Dowdall.
I think the introduction of a summer pass would be fantastic for students because it would really allow them to explore the city, get to see out Art Crawl, go see Webster's Falls, go up the mountain, explore the city on every level you can. And the reason I like it so much is because, to me, it reiterates the idea that we're not looking to bend the Hamilton community to McMaster. We, as McMaster students, are seeking to find our place in this community, and that's what I really think why a summer bus pass option is better for the community than simply introducing shuttle buses.
Anyone else? No. Okay. We'll take one more question from Angie.
Okay, so this one, first of all, I'd like to say that we received a bunch of questions, and we kind of have to narrow it down to the general ones. So this one comes from Twitter, from a user named Camgara. He asks, what are your plans for accommodating newcomers, ESL, and international students? Many are unaware of help available. Does anyone have any comments or responses?
Mr. Brodka?
I think that when you take on a position like MSU president, you're obviously immersed in so many different aspects of campus. And I think it's fair to say that none of us are experts of every single aspect of this campus. That's why I wanted to do something like the Change Forum, so we can actually reach out and connect with the diverse range of students we have at the school, that whether it be international, those that need special accessibility, getting their feedback, because again, I'm not an expert on it, and that's the only way to reach out to those students.
Mr. Mann?
Originally, that was one of my platform points until I found out that an international student was running, at which point I had to scrap it. Here at McMaster, I personally went on an exchange and I found out that it was extremely difficult for me, but at McMaster we have so many resources available to us. We have mentors, we have the international office. The fact that you unfortunately aren't getting these means that we're not doing a good job telling you what service is available, and in terms of accountability, that's something we need to address.
Mr. Fahey.
So, for international and English as a second language students here, I think we need to work in conjunction with the already existing student clubs for the various nationalities of students who get involved here. But we need to be able to provide, professional expertise where they need it, and be able to if we can use these clubs as a signpost to be able to direct these students to the services which are available at the Students Union and the university, then we're on a good stage to keeping their welfare as a priority.
Mr. Dowdall.
I think this is a great question, and it kind of hits back to the MSU's inability sometimes to communicate well with other groups, because as a part-time manager, I didn't know the International Student Services existed until they sent me an email saying, can I have some pamphlets? And they handed those out to students. They contacted students, letting them know about my service and how it was available. And I think maintaining those lines of communication, making sure they're clear and strong is important, because providing them with the information is key. A lot of them don't know a lot of the services, and I think working with the ISS and building a relationship with them is important and key to that.
Mr. Emmanuel.
I think the most important service the Space Marine Empire will provide to international students is conversion to the Empire. We want them to join us. We want them to stay here and become part of the larger Space Marine community. Part of that will be training, and training is the good way to put it, in the Space Marine beliefs, Space Marine ways of thinking. And then following that, I think sending these international students back home with the Space Marine vision in mind to bring it back to their school will help us.
Mr. Campbell.
So I think one spot or one time you can really look towards is Welcome Week and orientation in general. And that was one of my focuses during Welcome Week and during our review after Welcome Week this year, was meeting with ISS as well as Human Rights and Equity Services to make sure that all our events were as inclusive and as helpful as possible for people coming to McMaster, especially now that Welcome Week is paid for through a mandatory fee. So I definitely want to continue that work, looking at Welcome Week and our orientation and how that's preparing and welcoming students to McMaster.
Mr. Mann.
One aspect I'd like to touch on is the most difficult thing for international students, and that's the different examination techniques and assignment evaluations. I'd like to be able to refine the exam bank that we have currently and work with the ISS to hold mock examination sessions, as well as work closely with professors and departments.
More speakers? Oh, okay. We're going to get to our final few questions. We're going to have 2 more questions. They'll be quick, and then closing statements. We're going to go back to sort of our original format for these questions. It's going to be, for this one, you get 1 minute, and then we'll have a rebuttal round, 1 rebuttal each if you want it. And with this question, you can answer it if you want. What's one point in your platform that you don't think has received enough attention or discussion in this debate? And we're going to start with Mr. Emmanuel.
Let's see. We've covered rather well taking care of decision making in the MSU government by giving it to me. We've covered rather well the sweet deep fees that I'm semi-modeling right now. We've covered rather well spreading the Space Marine vision into the surrounding area, other campuses, and Hamilton. I think what I've left behind is 1280, which we've touched on, but I think I want to focus on more because that's the number one way I think we're going to get students involved in the Space Marine Empire, giving them a social space to work with. As it is, people who've talked to me about 1280 just don't like the place. It creeps people out. Like, let's be real here. Making it a space that's more inclusive and more, like, even in a way safe for people to be who they are is going to create a better student morale. And that's, I think, the platform point of mine that needs to be focused on more.
Mr. Fahey.
The one platform point which hasn't been discussed is the cost of food on campus. I've found to have a satisfying meal, I have a choice between eating unhealthily or not at all. So, as a normal student, so yeah, I'd definitely say that we need healthy food on campus for less than $5, including vegan and halal options. That's a big platform point of mine as well.
Mr. Mann.
I'd like to go back to the ombuds idea. I'd like to see, it's an issue that affects all of us, whether we're going to be on the MSU or not. It's a legislative issue. My sector, municipalities, universities, hospitals, police, none of these are covered by the ombudsman or his jurisdiction, so we have no accountability in that term. I'd like students to learn more about what the role of the ombudsman is in general at a provincial level, and its limitations on the university level.
Mr. Brodka.
A point that I just wanted to bring up again was the anti-office hours that I'm proposing. And this really just goes back to, I guess, the grassroots discussions that I've been having with students. I feel like that's the point of student representation. And a lot of people have expressed to me, well, the role becomes so private once you get elected. You're suddenly closed behind doors dealing with day-to-day affairs, and I wouldn't want to lose touch with the students I'm representing. So that was the purpose of the anti-office hours.
Mr. Campbell.
I think I've had a chance to talk about all of my platforms a little bit, but one which I do think deserves reemphasis is definitely library hours. I think this is something really tangible that I know the MSU can affect, which is going to affect the lives and experience of students immediately. So that's one that I definitely think we should be discussing more.
And Mr. Dowdall.
I think I've had the opportunity to talk about a lot of the platform points that are really close to my heart here today, but the one which I'm going to stress again that I love the most is my Mac Ovation project, simply because I like the idea of helping students find innovative ways of connecting what they're learning to what they're passionate about, simply because we're in university with this idea that unless you study certain degrees, you're not going to get a great job. And that's not necessarily true. In fact, there's a guest speaker at McMaster this weekend who did a Bachelor's of Arts degree and is currently the president and CEO of the Hamilton Chamber of Commerce. He went from a degree in art to business. And so I really want to help find a way to connect students with their passions and help them find creative ways to connect what they're learning to what they're passionate about.
Now you're each allowed a 30-second rebuttal to something you've just heard, if you want it. We're going to start with Mr. Emmanuel.
I'm okay with what I've heard. I think I'm going to pass on this one.
Pass.
I'm really curious because some of the teachers in the classes you've spoken in have commented on it. They say that you don't have the power to change library hours or pay for the infrastructure or the wages. How do you plan on actually changing the office hours?
I'm afraid...
I meant the library times.
Okay. We'll go around to Mr. Brodka.
I'm going to pass.
So I'm really happy you brought this up. I also heard about a professor talking about this after I'd left the classroom. And actually, as the MSU, we definitely have the power to do this. I released a more extensive blog post on it where there's more information. But not only does this idea come initially from a conversation I had with the Associate Vice President Academic, but I've had conversations with the librarians where they've said, absolutely, this is an affordable and realistic goal. And it's also worth noting that 2 years ago, there was a similar point made in presidentials, and there was a lot of action that came out of it.
Mr. Dowdall.
I like the idea of extending library hours. I'm glad to hear you've talked to librarians. When I spoke to a class the other day, a librarian was there presenting to that class as well, and she raised the comment that was, if the MSU is going to work towards extending library hours, how do I get to say that I don't want that because I don't want to be working till 4 in the morning while my kids are at home with their father?
Okay. One question before closing statements. It's you get 30 seconds to answer it and no rebuttals. Now that you've heard more detail about other candidate platforms, what's one platform from another candidate that you would adopt if you were elected? And we're going to start with Mr. Mann. Sorry, Mr. Fahey. My mistake.
I suppose I'll skip over the Brodka's change for him because we've pretty much almost said the same point in our platforms. I suppose other than the change for him, I don't know. I'd probably agree with Campbell's idea to cut the fees over summer. Sure, I'd have to concede that. It's a good point.
Mr. Mann. Oh, one point.
I think James is one of the most well-researched platforms, and I'd be very happy to adopt his Mac Innovation idea. In fact, we're currently working with MSU clubs to try to bring in something we call impetus, where students can do something very similar. I hope that should, unfortunately, James lose, he'd still be interested in taking up that idea to bring it to fruition.
Mr. Brodka?
Something that I'd look to adopt, or at least seek further input on is Haman's anti-calendar. I think that course selection is not necessarily a problem, but a challenge that every single student faces. And if there's a process that allows students to see feedback from other students, especially through the years, I think that would be a wonderful introduction.
Mr. Campbell.
Yeah, I already stated earlier that I think the 12-month bus pass is a lofty goal, but a really good one, and one that would be good to work towards in our negotiations next year with HSR.
Mr. Dowdall.
I'm going to say the freedom credit that Jacob's proposing, it's a fantastic idea that I've never thought of. And when I was in first year and thought about switching into commerce, taking one economics, one BO3 was not enough to help me know if I wanted to switch into commerce. And a program like this would have really helped me make that decision. And so I think it has a great potential behind it. So that's the one I would adopt.
And Mr. Emmanuel.
I'll be totally honest. Once I win, I'm just going to steal all of their ideas anyway. But if there was one that I would pick that I really personally enjoy, it's DC's mentioning about revamping and amplifying homecoming, but with a slight little twist. Instead of making it about McMaster traditions, let's make it Space Maroon traditions and ways of glorifying the Space Maroon Empire and me, because I'm an emperor and the emperor needs some lovin' every so often. Thank you.
Okay, time for closing statements. We'll start with Mr. Mann. You have 1 minute.
Okay. We've heard some very great ideas today, and win or lose, I hope everybody is still committed to engaging students and bringing them together and taking these ideas to bring them to reality one way or another, because otherwise it would be a big shame for all of them to disappear. I'm telling you that that's my commitment, but if I were elected, all of these promises would be a lot easier to bring to life than otherwise.
Mr. Brodka?
I think that it's very easy to highlight the challenge that the MSU could face with everything we're proposing at the table right now. And I feel like it's an uphill battle to find creative solutions to what we're proposing. But I feel like if it's in line with students' values and in line with what students want at this university, that's the job of the MSU president, to push boundaries and seek other areas that we can improve student experience on campus. I guess you can say, like, this is for all of us. A confident person promotes what it is that they're supporting, as opposed to tearing down the ideas of others.
Mr. Campbell.
Thank you. So first, I just use a few seconds of my time to address the librarian comment. The librarians being open doesn't mean that the librarians have to be there. Currently, Mills being open late is watched by security. Innis being open on the weekends is watched by part-time students and not by librarians. So that's librarians would not have to be there any later than they do already. But in closing to my comments, I suppose I'd say what I've really tried to do with this campaign is not just talk about my experience, but demonstrate it. Through my platform, I think I have a very well-researched platform, a platform where students know if they vote for it exactly what they're going to get, because the ideas have been thought through from start to finish, and I know exactly how to implement them. So that's really what I've tried to do with my campaign, is not just talk about experience, but demonstrate it.
Mr. Dowdall.
So I'd like to thank everyone for coming out today. I've heard some great ideas, heard some great questions, and I love it. And my concluding statement is going to be more directed at us all, regardless of who wins this. It is, remember that our actions as MSU president impact not just the students of this university and not just the volunteers, but the faculty of this university, the members of the Hamilton community. And what I've noticed throughout my last year as a part-time manager is we forget this. We forget that what we do has a huge impact and not always positive. I have seen the negative, and I want to see us starting to ask you the questions. How is this going to impact students? Because if it's going to be negative towards us, maybe we need to take that hit to help benefit students. I just want us to put students first and not ourselves.
Mr. Emmanuel.
I'm going to answer this in a little rhyme. I don't think it's going to take all of my time. Everyone knows that this is the word, but everyone also knows that the bird is the word. I really like what this was said by Jacob Broad, but I think my suits will show off our bods. Everything is cool with David Campbell, but I think my way is really swell. I want to say shout out to Dowdall, but all of y'all are going to fall. I love things said by Dan from Manchester, but then we're going to go and take on Western. Love Haman, but I'm the one with the best plan. So don't do anything just for free. Use your vote. Vote for me. Word is 2013. Yeah.
And to follow that, Mr. Fahey.
I would usually beatbox now, but so yeah, like, thanks for watching, everyone. I think it's interesting hearing people's platform points, and especially the conversations I've had over the past week with people. A lot of people have come up to me with specific points, asking me, what I'm going to do with them, and I found it quite strange how the presidential election seemed to be this sort of last-ditch attempt from the students to sort of get their issue seen to, and I found that quite symptomatic, perhaps, of a decision-making body where problems have to be dealt with by a presidential election, or we have to deal with such basic, simple issues at the presidential level, rather than it being sort of the broader, more focused problems in society and how our students' union wants to deal with them. So that's why I think I've tried to shift the debate back to democratic power of the students' union and focus on fighting student movement.
Thanks. Okay. Thanks for joining our MSU presidential debate, hosted by the Silhouette Mac Student Newspaper. You can see these candidates again Tuesday afternoon. They'll be debating in the Student Center. If you're just catching the end of our live feed, you can access the video from our site, thesil.ca. It'll be up on YouTube shortly. Thanks, guys.
Emperor out.